actually remember the first couple of episodes, like wondering how far we'd go, like how long we'd take it. Would we ever do 100? I even listened to a podcast who was celebrating their 100th, and I was like, gosh, imagine what that'd be like to have 100 episodes under your belt. And here we are, just like
Yeah.
that.
Here we are. 100 episodes. I know. I can't believe it. We should almost dedicate this episode to our husbands who are like, if you guys get 10.
Yeah, I think that's right around the time my husband quit listening to the podcast was episode 10. He's like, cool, cool. I support you. Have a good time. Let me know how it goes.
I
I was
know.
going to
God bless
dedicate
them.
it to our producer, Seth, who, has been like
Yeah.
the silent partner behind the Lilas podcast. He might be half our age and a boy, but there is no bigger commitment to the Lilas podcast than Seth. So
100%.
I was going to put
Yes.
this out to
And he's
him.
so fresh. Yeah, there we go.
And
All right. We've got
fun
2 dedications out there.
to all the
That's
guys,
it.
even
So
though it's the
fun.
Lilas podcast. Let's dedicate this to a bunch of men. Anywho, here we are, episode 100 of the Lilas podcast. And it's a little bit of our own personal therapy session. And that's sort of what it started out as, like just two friends with some training in mental health. And let's talk about the stuff that's hard for us. And so I'm really happy that we have stuck to that.
We're always in the mood for growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And personal change and spicing things up. And so we have a very cool episode today. So we're going to go through a survival guide here of different thoughts, different patterns we kind of find into ourselves in, and what we can do to kind of kick ourselves out of it.
We've put together this survival guide that we're going to dive into season 6, so you can expect some in-depth episodes for each of these survival guide tips. Tip number 1 in the survival guide, it's the all or nothing thinking. So what's your tip, Sarah? What's your survival tip for that all or nothing thinking?
The first overall thing is whenever we are at a point of crisis, it's important for us to go inward and identify what loop we are finding ourselves in. And so an all or nothing thinking is that it is basically black or white. That it's either my way or the highway, and there's not a true in between. And we all have very strong opinions. I have extremely strong opinions at times, but I don't know that their strength is measured in so much the idea of being right, but in being willing to compromise and find some middle ground. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you do find yourself like within that space, then I think the first thing to do again is just to step back, take a few deep breaths in, maybe even write down on a sheet of paper like where your idea is and the other person's or thing is. Because sometimes it doesn't help us to keep it all in our head because it just gets all jumbled and entangled. But whenever we can see something written down on a sheet of paper, it does show us that there's space in between thoughts. And so just that simple action of writing down what your all or nothing thought is, and then even if maybe you just make up what the opposite might be at that end of the spectrum, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. But what you need to see in that area is space. And then at the bottom of that, I'd almost just make like an inverted triangle. So that way, then you can see what that middle ground is. So I have this thought here, I have this thought here, but somewhere at this point is probably what is most reasonable, effective, um, much more of almost like a problem solving stance to it
Mm-hmm.
than just being kind of caught within this like two polar places.
Yeah, just kind of deciding like what you're willing to sort of compromise, like what's your bottom line. I think about it as something as simple
Mm-hmm.
as like stupid ass things that I struggle with in the all or nothing category of like, if I can't do it exactly to the T of the way it is in my head, then it's not even worth doing. Whatever it is, right? If I decide I want to bake cookies for Jolie's soccer team. If that's what I've decided and I can't get that done, well, then nothing goes. Instead of, well, maybe you just pick up some cookies. Like, what's the end goal of what you're trying to do here? They don't have to be homemade cookies. Like, nobody really cares. That's you putting that pressure on yourself. So I'm like, my mind goes
Mhm,
super generic with that, but I'm like, just recognizing,
mhm.
like, what's the end goal and then what's going to help you, like, meet that goal. You're problem solving, right? Same
Yeah,
thing. Same exact same thing you're saying,
right.
just much more watered down in
It
my
is.
in my way of saying
Yeah,
it.
no,
True to
but I
form.
mean, that's just what that's just what it's a beautiful way to think of it. Yeah, we're almost even at times not even compromising with somebody else, but with ourself and with our own
Right.
expectations.
Right. Our own
And
expectations. I love that you say that.
yeah, and that's just I think that that's just something that we just have to be willing to kind of put down or at least
Mhm.
see whenever that is driving our distress. Like, what is really driving the distress I'm feeling in this moment? Like, I don't think that it is a bunch of kids who could maybe care less or not about cookies. They're playing on the grass. They're
Right.
chasing a butterfly. You
Right.
know?
I like that. Looking for the middle
Mhm.
ground and problem solving.
Write it down.
Number 2 on our survival guide, guilty of every single one of these, but number 2 is
We all are.
catastrophizing. Catastrophizing. I can barely even say it.
It's such a big word, right? But it's a big feeling. Usually, catastrophizing starts by us having some type of thought, experience with somebody else, work, relationships, kids, whatever, that, starts as a snowflake on top of the mountain. And instead of just seeing that one snowflake fall on top of the mountain and join the other beautiful snowflakes that have just fallen on top of the mountain, we then attach ourselves to that magic snowflake and allow it to then turn into a giant ball that then turns into an avalanche that then takes out all the skiers and beautiful lodge that's all the way down at the bottom and then crashes down to the point where we just feel so exhausted
Yeah. That sounds
and
about right.
helpless.
I'm
Yeah.
very guilty of
But
that.
during that avalanche, the crazy part is during the avalanche, it heightens our anxiety, it heightens our worry, our rumination, like we're constantly thinking about it, but then also attaching it to like the worst case possible scenarios as if they're 100% likely. And
Right.
so we've got ourselves 1,000% worked up. We
Convinced,
hit
right.
the bottom of the mountain, right? Hit the bottom of the mountain, and now we're exhausted.
Amen, sister. Boy, have I felt that in my bones. I'm like, oh, it's like being
I
inside my
know.
brain all the time. Especially after you have kids. Like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that just could like always picturing the worst possible thing that could happen. What's
Mhm.
our tip for that? How do we get ourselves out of catastrophizing?
I think it's first you have to recognize what thought was it that just what was the magic snowflake that just fell at the top of the mountain? Focus on what that one was. And then again, look at what is most likely. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when we're catastrophizing, we almost get tunnel vision and we only see what we see right in front of us. We're not able to see in our peripherals. We're not able to see anything else. And so at that point, again, it's about that expansion. Like, but not expansion into a negative. So you can do this in two ways. So if you want to expand your thoughts and focus on something, then you can say, well, not only is this kid going to fail, they're also going to end up dropping out of high school and then living on the street, being homeless and then addicted to drugs. And then she's going to get pregnant. And now we're going to have to be grandparents raising a kid.
Right.
You can go down that list pretty good and quick. But I think you have to focus on what's most likely. Is that a possibility? Absolutely. Could that be one of 10,000 things that happen? The answer is yes, but it comes down to probability versus possibility. Like, is it possible that that can happen? Yes, but is it
Yeah.
probable?
No.
I
I've
don't
been
know.
actually using that
No.
with my son lately because we had a very turbulent flight the last time that we were on an airplane together, and he has not been on a plane since. It was scary, I'll be honest. You could tell it wasn't something they were expecting, right? A lot of like dropping, and
Mm-hmm.
he was trying to find like smooth air. Anyway, it was scary for all of us. And he's really nervous because we're about to fly in a couple weeks for Thanksgiving. And I'm like, You have to remember all the times we've flown that there was no turbulence. Us focusing on that one time, that one super turbulent flight that we had is giving it a lot of extra weight. Like it's going to happen all the time. I'm like, but think about all the times we've flown where you didn't even know you were on an airplane, right? Like other than getting on
Yeah.
and off of it. So, trying to just remind him the same thing of like, what's like, could that happen again? Yeah, it can, but how often does that actually happen?
Are we using a magnifying glass or are we looking through binoculars?
Right.
I think that sometimes whenever we're catastrophizing too, behaviorally, we're sitting. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're just sitting on, like, a couch or in our bed or in our car, and we're just sitting there thinking about something. So, even if it's hard for you to break off and think about what's most likely, you have got to get your butt up and go do something. You have
Yeah.
got to get outside. You have got to get yourself some fresh air. You've got to hop in the shower, do, like, 10 jumping jacks. You have to do something to get yourself in a different environment. Yeah, physiologically and spatially.
You'll begin to believe what you're saying. And so if you just start to say things like, I am safe, that's one thing I wrote down I wanted to do more of. Just one of those tools in the toolbox is using more of that like positive affirmations when you do start a spiral, or even like positive imagery of like places and things that make you feel super calm, and using those when you start to feel heightened. Okay, here's a big one: self criticism. I just assume everyone does
Yeah.
this. I mean, I would actually like for someone to tell me that they don't criticize themselves. I would. I don't know that I've ever met anybody that isn't critical of themselves. Well, no, I have. But for the most part, I feel like we are all so critical of ourselves. I know,
Mhm.
again, definitely something I'm guilty of. But
Yeah.
also reminding myself a lot more to like give yourself grace. You're not perfect. Give yourself grace. Like changing the way I talk to myself.
Right, and a lot of times whenever we're parents, I think that we attach our self to our kids
Mm-hmm.
and how well they're performing,
Absolutely.
which then adds to our level of self-criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're
Yep.
not performing well or doing whatever we have in mind for them to do, then that's whenever we then are the failure. Like, we're
Yeah.
failing our house, we're
Like we
failing our
did.
family, we're failing our home. I think we say things that are self-critical at times that we don't even recognize. Like, if you even are looking in the mirror and I say, "I wish I had curly hair." If I'm saying that in front of, Rachel,
Yeah.
I'm not meaning to be self-critical about myself, but I'm also vocalizing something that cannot
It's
be
negative.
changed no matter how many thousands of dollars, you know what I
Right,
mean? Or
right.
skills that I try to obtain can change it. I'm telling her something that's negative and critical about me, which then makes it easier for her to voice those things about herself. And so I think it really comes down to us being aware of that. And then, like you said, treating yourself with kindness, with grace, recognizing that, the burdens of the world are not ours to just shoulder.
Mhm.
We are imperfect human beings. And that's why there's something called like grace or kindness or faith or self care just to kind of help us to preserve. And
Yeah.
so at those moments, I would do something that you find to be self soothing, that you
Mhm.
find to be comforting, but not cocooning.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between the 2. Um, and so I would find a way just to honor yourself, engage in an activity that you like, take a few extra minutes, a 2-minute walk outside, a hike, I don't know, aromatherapy, whatever, just to kind of give yourself a break. And while doing so, like you said, verbalize, maybe out loud to yourself, like, I'm safe, I'm worthy, I'm good, I'm imperfect, and that's okay because that's what I'm supposed to be. And I'm working on it,
Yeah.
whatever it has to be, but just don't allow yourself to fall into a trap where the self criticism becomes your self identity.
Yeah. That reminds me of another activity that I did. One of it was, so you wrote down 5 people that you enjoy being around, 5 activities you enjoy doing, 5 places you like to go or be in. And then you were to look at your schedule for the next 2 weeks and to see how much like overlap there was. Like if you had
Hmm.
down yoga with your best girlfriends, like, is that something that you have scheduled into your week? And I thought that's a really interesting way
Hmm.
if you struggle with being intentional and planning things that you really enjoy. That's an interesting way to look at, okay, what do I have
Mm.
built into my schedule that actually like fills me up and like makes me feel good about myself? Um,
Mhm.
because we know that like companionship and being around friends is so important. And so
Right.
if you're not intentional about scheduling that, that's something that is not going to add to our self-worth, right?
I love
It's
that
a little tip.
exercise though because yeah, because it makes you identify what those things are, but then what you've done with it is that you've actually looked at your calendar and now you can give yourself credit
Yeah,
and say, "Hey, I am doing this." And then whenever you're doing it, it can fill up your cup even more because now it has that intentional awareness behind it.
right.
So, that's a beautiful exercise. I love
Right?
that. That's
It's
perfect.
really cool.
Mhm.
It also sees like maybe you're spending time with things that deplete you. Like you could do the opposite too of like looking at things that deplete you and like suck the life from you and then look at your schedule and see how much of that kind of stuff you're doing too. Like really kind of like analyze how you're spending your time and how you're filling your own bucket. That's the I think the goal of it. Um all right, so I like
That's
that.
a good one.
Self-criticism be damned. Number
I know.
4, again, one that I this is something I have to really uh, be mindful about. Play on words here, but I have to be mindful because sometimes we do
Mhm.
think people can read our minds, or we think we told somebody something and we didn't actually like finish the text or hit send or whatever it is. And so sometimes we do expect people to read our minds, or we just think, why can't like I'm that way, guilty that way with my husband. I'm like, "Well, I like it this way. Why wouldn't you just, why wouldn't you just assume we're
Mhm.
eating at 6 o'clock? Because that's when I like to eat." Whatever it is.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
you know me well enough. But that whole mind reading thing, like, yeah, it can definitely create some division in relationships if you're assuming
Mhm.
people know how you feel. I've made that
Yeah.
mistake many times.
If you're assuming people know how you feel, or in my case, I am assuming how I think they feel. And that's
Ooh,
the other
I
thing,
like
like,
that.
I'm mind reading them. That's my trap that I fall into, is that I'm reading his mind about how he really feels about something.
Mm. You're making like creating a story almost of like what you think the other person is
Yeah.
thinking instead of verifying. And then you're collecting clues to sort of validate the story that you've come up with. Yeah, that's a mind trap.
Mhm.
I can relate to that one too. That can take you down a dark hole quickly. When you start like
Right.
making up scenarios. Why can't we do that to the positive? Why is it that we do it negatively? Why can't we positively make up scenarios in our head
Right?
and say only because if we're going to give attention to the negative scenarios and stories we're making up, like why not give attention to the positive ones? Like
Mhm.
you got a 50-50 shot. Either one of them is going to work out. Like either one of them is going to happen. Um,
Right.
Probably even more likely that it's going to be towards the positive.
I mean, it's what we all fall into. And so I think again, here is recognizing when you're doing it and then just communicating. And that just comes down to saying, I'm like in my case, because I'm reading his mind.
Hmm.
Um, I say I am feeling really alone and kind of disconnected right now. And I know that these are probably things that I'm projecting on you. So I'm gonna own that, but I also need something back in between. Like, I just need a
Mhm.
few minutes of your time. Like, you just need to
Mhm.
communicate what is happening
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
most likely what's actually occurring is that you're both just too busy doing different things and that there's this whole big gap that then just gets created within it.
Yeah.
And so I think just taking a few minutes at that point to communicate and to reconnect instead of assuming and then collecting evidence. Again, even if you're thinking, well, you should know this because this is what I always like to do, you've got a whole bunch of evidence about what you like to do.
Right.
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 And now we're just, throwing that back at them. And so I think it just takes a few
Yeah.
minutes, like even exiting the room, exiting the phone call, whatever, just so that way you can just have a few minutes, reconnect, communicate what needs are actually not being expressed, and then allow yourself to kinda, like, have a moment and breathe, instead of just running around. There's this fun saying that, we always used to kinda say, uh, "There's only one thing you are for assuming, and the first 3
Mm.
letters of that are in the word." So
Isn't that the truth? Never assume.
right?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
communicating, it's so easy to be like, yeah, just communicate your needs, but that is so hard to do. And I don't know why, and I can't wait until we really like dive into this in a full-on episode because like why is it so hard to communicate our needs? Why are we so reluctant to just say, "Hey, I need this, I want this," like to be direct? Why is
Mhm.
that easier for some people than others? Because if you communicate and you're direct, right there knocks out 90% of your problems. If you're
Sure.
just,
Sure.
honestly communicating. So much happens when we start assuming. Okay. So
I
don't
know.
expect people to read your minds. Communicate your needs, people. Number 5 on the survival guide, overcommitting. Oof. Yeah. Boy, did I learn that lesson hard this season, this fall season. Too many sports, too many things, way overcommitted. And yeah, it'll burn you out with a quickness.
It does. Um, and I think our generation and maybe the one before us we've just decided that that's how we parent almost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We've always got to have our
Yep.
kids involved in dance and cheer and soccer and, basketball and baseball and golf and all of these different things. And if we don't, then I think we've assigned that with like, we're a loser. We're not doing enough for our kids. And we're not, I don't know
Right.
where these thoughts are coming
They're not
from,
active
but
enough
we
or
are,
yeah.
yes,
Mhm.
overcommitting. So if you look at the things that you have coming up in your life, like with dread
Mhm.
or just with seeing it as more of work than fun, then that aura that is coming off of you is also being transmitted to your kids and to your family, to the environment that you walk into. And so again, we talked about this in a recent episode, I think in our holiday episode, is just
Yeah.
practice saying no. And you can do a polite no, you can do
Mhm.
um a yes no, which is like I'd really like to do this and I feel like now is not the right time,
Yeah.
you know? But I'll look forward to exploring this later on down the road. You know, practice saying no at a drive-through. That used to be something that I would give people as an assignment almost. Would be like they would always have a very, very difficult time with that. And I'd be like, okay, well, they always want you to biggie size something. Let's just practice saying no to the biggie size.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Start small, but then
Start small.
work your way up and do
I
the yes, no. Say yes to a different time, but acknowledge now's not the right time. Now I don't think we're going to
yeah.
do this.
I think I love that, the yes no technique. I was also going to say, I've sort of, if you find yourself overcommitted like I did, one thing that I found at least somewhat helpful was sort of habit stacking during that time
Mhm.
that I was sitting at the gym during gymnastics for 2 hours or, grocery shopping when she's in dance or anything that I could do at this, to at least feel like I was accomplishing something that I needed to get off my, task list.
Mhm.
But I still felt like you have to make it as enjoyable as possible because you can't get out of it.
Mhm.
And so I think
Mhm.
just, what can you do to squeeze in like time for you, whether that's a walk and talk or go get a nice
Right.
cup of coffee, whatever you need to do. All right, number 6. Whew, we're only halfway through this list, right? Damn.
I
All right, we got to
know.
move it
Should
along
almost
here.
save these.
Number 6, let's go. The comparison trap. Oof, the comparison trap.
I mean,
Really feel like I've gotten a lot better at this. You know what has helped tremendously is keeping a gratitude journal. Because if you are forced every day to write down what you're grateful for, it doesn't leave a lot of time to think about what you don't have or what somebody else has. Not to say that I don't have impulses or flashes of jealousy. That absolutely happens. But I'm not constantly comparing myself to what somebody else has or their marriage or their house or their children. And I don't really care.
well, and that's the advice. It's to do the gratitude journal, and it's just to
Yeah.
appreciate your journey. It's appreciating the point you're at, and whatever that point is, that's the one that we're at. If that's a meltdown, that's a meltdown. If that's whatever, it's just appreciating where we're at.
And if that is something that you struggle with, the comparison trap, I highly recommend my good friend, Kate Strickland. She wrote a book called I Just Wish I Had a Bigger Kitchen and Other Lies I Tell Myself. I actually have a copy right here. She gives practical tips at the end of each chapter. She also came on our podcast. Check out that episode, but also check out that book because it is great if comparison trap is one of your biggies. All right, number 7, people pleasing. Oof.
This is
girl.
gonna be a full episode coming up in season 6. We talk
Ugh,
about it,
can't
but
wait.
it's still one of those things, and it's because I think setting healthy boundaries is hard for us because we associate it with being mean or being negative or not giving enough of ourselves.
Or not supporting someone enough,
Yeah.
right? If I
Yeah.
set a boundary, then
Exactly.
I'm not there for you. If I say I don't want to hear about the same problem you've been talking about for 10 years. Now I'm being not supportive. We're
Exactly.
not solving the
It's
problem.
not healthy.
Right. It's not healthy. It's affecting me. Right. People pleasing is
Mhm.
such a. We were like so hardwired as young girls growing up in the 80s and 90s to be people pleasers, right? Like we got so much conditioning and reinforcement for making other people happy. And so undoing that after we've practiced it for 40 fucking years is really hard. And
It's a lot.
it's a lot. And I mean, I would say there's definitely I've made strides in certain areas of my life in people pleasing, but in other ways, not so much. There's still a part of me that gets
Yeah.
stuck in that trap. So, healthy boundaries. This will be an awesome episode to dive into and really talk about setting
Mhm.
those healthy and giving some practical tips for that.
Yes, most definitely. And how to do it because it's one thing like we're just kind of sitting here and saying it now, but in that episode we're actually going to go through and talk about how to do it. But so be aware and you've been warned it's coming up.
You've been
So
warned, Lord.
it's just
All
you've
right.
been
No,
warned it's coming.
number 8, emotional numbing. Oof.
Yeah. This is an easy one, I think I fall into this trap a lot. Like I feel so much sometimes that it's easier to feel nothing and then I can just quit on it, you know? And or that we just don't allow ourselves to have the full experience of joy or of like true happiness because maybe our mind is set on the next thing, you know? And so then we just get numb to almost everything or everything just turns out to be fine or painted as one color instead of others. And so at that point, I think it just comes down to allowing yourself to feel a full range of emotions. And to do that, you have to start using more adjectives in how you describe things. So that is a whole other lesson, like in grammar, right? Going back to what an adjective is. Um, but instead of just saying things are fine, yeah,
Right, owning it and don't convince yourself that you don't care. Because sometimes I think we can convince ourselves of things that just simply aren't true, right? Like the negative self-talk and making up stories and really calling ourselves on that and saying, do I care? Because I'm feeling a certain type of way about this, which would indicate that I actually care a lot about this said
right.
situation, So um that's really talking about being honest with ourselves and what we truly want and need to feel whole.
Mm. Yeah, well, I just think of it in those ways, but then also just start to notice what words you use to describe how your day is, and then maybe start to throw in some other examples. Like if I just say fine all the time, that's an example of emotional numbing because I'm not
Sure.
being truthful and honest about what's happening. It sounds okay, but that's maybe not the truth. And so, I'd really look to expanding that out. Get at the what a thesaurus. There, I said it right.
Or just like, make it a rule that you can't say fine. I worked with a teacher one time and she used to have her kids bury can't. They weren't allowed to say the word
Mm-hmm.
can't in her classroom and they had like
Yeah.
a whole burial ceremony. And so like almost like maybe not to that extent, but like that idea of like, you're not allowed to say fine as a response. If somebody asks you
Mm-hmm.
like, how was that meeting? Well, that meeting sucked because it took longer than it was supposed to and there was no resolution. It wasn't fine.
Right.
It sucked.
Right.
And I think that one just goes back to being really honest with ourselves and not being afraid
Mhm.
to say it out loud. All right. Two more to go. Number 9, we have nostalgia loops. And the tip is to focus on the present moment. But I guess let's talk
Mhm.
about what's a nostalgia loop.
I think it's one of those moments whenever you go back and say, "Do you remember how this used to be? Do you remember how we used to do this or that? Do you remember when you used to be like this?"
Mm.
And I think we do that a lot whenever we are looking back on a relationship, whether it's with our kids or our partners most likely, and then we're using that as a negative instead of as a positive. We're not
Mm,
appreciating then where we're at in this space and how much we've changed and how much growth has taken place. Instead, we're wishing like we were still in like that dating stage or that we didn't have so many other commitments or that, you
mm,
know, work hadn't changed to be what it is or that we hadn't made it like a move to a new, location or whatever. It's whenever you find yourself kind of going back in time, but again, wishing almost that that was still here, but
mhm,
doing it with a dissatisfaction or resentment towards the present moment. It's nice to look back and to appreciate things,
mm,
but if you're looking back with wanting it to be how it is now, A, that's just impossible and unrealistic. It's not giving anybody, you know, credit in a sense for all that's happened, but it
mhm.
just sets you up again almost for a different form of a negative comparison. So it's its own trap if it's used the wrong way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I could definitely see even thinking about like kids, like wishing the kids were still little and
Mhm.
not really appreciating the current stage that they're in. Because you just
Sure.
want those little babies back, or you just want, when
Mhm.
they didn't talk back to you and that kind of stuff. Like, oh, what I wouldn't give, and
Right.
you're not fully present to appreciate the phase that you're in,
Right.
which is hard for
Right.
all of us as adults. It's hard not to look at videos and see your kids like, oh, you're just like, man, that went fast. I think
Yeah.
more than anything is what I keep saying. I'm like, damn, that went fast. Where'd the
Yeah.
last few years go? So
Mhm.
we'll have some tips on how to really stay present and get yourself off the loop.
Mhm.
And then number
There it
10
is.
of the survival guide, perfectionism. Embrace the good enough. Man, if this podcast has taught me nothing else, it is number 10. Just doing something is good enough. You don't have to be perfect. You will learn, you'll figure it out, but you
Mhm.
got to start. You got to do it, because if you wait till everything's perfect, nothing ever gets done. And I've had to
Nothing
learn
ever
that
gets done.
over and over again. God, how many times did we
Mhm.
used to re record episodes, season one, because
Mhm.
we didn't like
Mhm.
something about it?
Something.
Right? Like we were trying to perfect them. And what we have found is if we just get up here and like grip it and rip it and like, that we have more
That's what
listeners,
works.
better feedback, like all the
Mhm.
things than trying to curate
Mhm.
like this perfect podcast. Um,
Right.
Man, how much has changed in 100 episodes? Do you ever think about
I
that? Just
know.
laugh of like,
Yes.
and all we needed to do was
I found our
start.
own scripts. Yeah. We
God,
had
the
scripts that we would
scripts
kind of go back
taped
here.
up behind
Mhm.
my computer because I couldn't, like, I would go blank every time I turned the computer on. I couldn't think to talk. We're good enough because we just started. And that's the real prize, is how much you learn and get messy in the process of whatever it is. The
Mhm.
imperfection is really where the growth happens. And so you could apply that to everything.
And we do apply the idea of perfectionism to everything. There's a range within everything, and we're just trying to find that good enough range. And are we
Mm-hmm.
striving still? Sure. But do we have this dead set goal of 100%? No. And
Mm-mm.
that's not it's not possible. And that's even where I've started to move away from using the word balance because
Mm.
balance is impossible. Like all of our life, we're carrying around a platter with a bunch of balls on it, and we're supposed to be
Yeah.
balancing all of this stuff while walking around a dog or kids going down. No, you know what I mean? This isn't happening. And so
Yeah.
we're just really focusing on embracing the good enough, finding a rhythm within life and allowing ourselves to kind of like freely dance through it. And we can't do that if we're holding on to any of these different types of like thinking patterns rigidly.
Mm-mm.
And so here we go, guys.
Yeah. Well, happy
Here we go.
100. We did it. We
Happy
did it. I'm so
100.
proud of us. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for sharing with
Yes.
friends. For any time that you have given us feedback, whether that's in person or in
Hmm.
writing, we truly, can't wait to like text each other. We always share it with each other and let each other know. So it means a lot to us. Thanks for sticking
Hmm.
with the Lilas podcast. We're sticking with you. And you can expect to hear more about these traps and get some real practical tips. Let's conquer this survival guide. What do you say? check us out. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, the Lilas Podcast. Check out the website, lilaspodcast.com. And as always, feel free to text, call, write, let us know. Any ideas you have. We do have a long list of ideas. You all have been so kind and thoughtful and submitting some really great ideas. And so we do actually have a long list of topics for season 6, but we're still taking them. So send them our way. If you've got some ideas, some guests you'd like to get for us to try to get on the podcast, let us know. And as always, thank you. Until next, until episode 101, y'all, Lilas.
Woo! We out.